Okay, so our agenda today, we're going to talk about workforce demographics, societal influences of younger workers, what younger workers worry about and what they want, how you can attract younger workers, retain younger workers, and really get them engaged. And then we'll address some of the challenges and strategies of managing younger workers in the workplace. Okay, so by 2030, the workforce population will predominantly include younger workers. So, just a few years, they're going to be the predominant group in the workplace. Millennials, who were born from 81 to 96, will make up 35%, or 37%, and Gen Z, so they were born from 96 to 2012, will account for 35%. So, if you think about it, uh, you know, the older generations are retiring and leaving the workforce, and now we have the baby boomers. Gen X will pretty much be once a lot of baby boomers are left, we'll be mostly left with Gen X, and now then all the millennials and Gen Z. I'm kind of curious. And so maybe you can put it in a chat box. I'd like to see what some of your workforce looks like. Is it 50-50, majority, are the majority still Gen X and baby boomers, or does anybody have a majority that are already Gen Z and millennials? So go ahead and type in the chat box. Just give us a quick line about the demographic of what your workforce looks like. Okay, we've got somebody that says Gen Z. Okay, a lot of younger workers there. Majority millennials and Gen Z. Okay, so Gen X 65%, millennials 30. Not quite half yet, but you're getting there, right? Gen Z, millennials, Gen Z. So it looks like we've got a lot of people, and that's probably why you're here today, right? Got a lot of Gen Z and millennials, at least half your workforce. So that's good. We're going to really dive into what it is, how to manage them, and what they're looking for. So let's talk about what some of the societal influences of younger workers are. They're the most racially and ethnically diverse generation in our history. They've played crucial roles in movements fighting racism, discrimination, sexual harassment, gun violence, and worsening climate change. They have a growing income disparity, making the possibility of social mobility more unrealistic than ever. I think a lot of us in the workforce and even as parents and grandparents wonder how are our kids and grandchildren going to buy a house? That's often a topic. So we don't see them with the kind of disposable income that we saw in earlier generations. This is really exacerbated by COVID-19 because COVID-19 is when Gen Z entered the workforce, and that has a huge impact on their outlook, how they view things. Many of them were quickly either furloughed or even fired right after they started entering the workforce, so that absolutely has some impact on them. This kind of created a mistrust of the status quo, disconnection and impatience, and demanding for immediate action around issues that they really care about. So, one thing to really understand is Gen Z employees are bringing their values and their priorities to work with them. Where we would, in older generations, we didn't know necessarily somebody's outside of work priorities. We didn't even necessarily know about their families, but Gen Z has definitely said they want their values and their priorities brought to work with them. They really have a desire for transparency around recognition and rewards. So we're going to address recognition and rewards in a bit. What do younger workers worry about? These numbers are pretty parallel. They're a little bit, a little different, but cost of living, millennials worry about that a little more than Gen Zs do, but the cost of living, and it just keeps climbing and climbing. And again, very difficult right now for these generations to even think about home ownership. Climate change is very important to them. Um, uh, I'm going down the millennial side first, just because they're older, then crime and safety, healthcare, and disease prevention, and then the concern of unemployment. As you can see on Gen Z side, cost of living also is the number one concern. So I think we all worry about, right, cost of living, and it just keeps going up. Unemployment, Gen Zs have a higher concern about that than millennials because, again, Gen Zs entered the workforce and many of them promptly became unemployed. Climate change, mental health of their generation, and then crime and personal safety. So it's important to know what they worry about because, they make decisions based on that and concerns that they have. As you can see, when you look at this between millennials and Gen Zs, about half of them fear they'll be laid off. And again, a lot of them entered the workforce or they were part of being laid off in COVID. This generation's far less likely to have any emergency savings. So if they did get laid off, they don't have something that they can fall back on or rely on. And so something to think about, an idea that I've seen a few companies starting to float around is helping younger workers build emergency savings, whether it's an emergency savings program where they can put money aside in a kind of savings program, a rainy day fund, teaching them better financial habits is another idea. You can sweeten the deal by doing an employee match in such a program. Also, they're dealing with paying down college debt. And so I've seen a couple of programs now by employers who are offering to help pay down college debt. So instead of tuition reimbursement, it's almost like I'll help you pay down your college debt in exchange for you staying with the company for a number of years. So if we can understand what their fears and concerns are, and then we can actually help address them through the workplace, it does create a lot. It creates attracting younger workers, and it creates retaining them. Okay, so what do younger workers want from life? What are their aspirations? So the highest one for both millennials and Gen Z is to travel and see the world. They also want to earn higher salaries and be wealthy. I think we all want that, right? They want to be able to buy a home, and they want to have a positive impact on their community and society, and they want to have children and start their families. So, so again, these generations, they work to live, where generations before them lived to work. And they've flipped that on a dime. So flexibility is necessary when we're managing this group of employees. And one of the areas of flexibility that they want is time off, right? Time off to see the world, time off to do community service, time off to for raising a family. So the more flexible a workplace you can offer, the more you're going to be attracted to by younger workers. Um, and there's a lot of ways to increase flexibility. Right away, the first thing that a lot of people go to is remote work. Remote work doesn't mean flexibility. And I've been dealing with quite a few employers lately who are having issues with remote workers who are also um, have children at home, right? And so also remote work is not a substitute for childcare. So you can have a remote work policy and offer some flexibility around that based on the kind of work you do. So if let's say your work is not necessarily client facing, for example, and the employees can do work. It isn't necessarily that they have to fit in a box from 8 to 5. They can work early mornings, they can work in the evening, they can work late at night to get the work done. You might be able to offer some flexibility around that. That might be quite attractive to people with younger children. Or if you can offer flexibility by project work, where a project can be done and then you can have some time off. That's attractive to somebody who wants to travel. So you really have to look at how can I incorporate some of this flexibility into my workforce, whether employees are working remotely or working at the office. Okay, so what do younger workers want from their work? And you can see I've got it here from extremely important to not important at all. And again, flexibility, big, it's always the biggest, highest one on the list. I want flexibility to achieve a work-life balance, providing a positive work environment, and offering a fair and competitive salary, and is committed to DEI. So again, we have right now in the current administration, we have taken DEI out of the mix. But that doesn't mean people still don't want that kind of environment. So that's still something we're looking at. Very important. So, not extremely important, but still very important is that they have mission and values that align with my own. And more than ever, I am encouraging companies who don't have mission, vision, and values that are written, that they write those, that they prepare those mission, vision, and values, because you want to attract people who are aligned with this, just like people want to work for a company that's aligned with their own mission, vision, and values. And that includes a thriving company culture. I do a separate seminar, and we could probably offer this again to SCORE, but I do a whole separate seminar on culture and alignment and mission and vision and values for companies that are interested in that. Because I think a lot of companies are interested, but they're not necessarily sure how I go about that, how I incorporate it into my culture, etc. They want opportunities to grow, advance, and climb the corporate ladder. I just met with a company last week that we are helping them with their whole corporate culture, corporate ladders type of thing. Happens to be a construction company, and they're more on the design engineer side. But they are trying to hire younger engineers, younger project managers, and they're a smaller company, so they say, well, we don't really have a lot of we don't have a career ladder per se for them. How do we address that? Because we want these younger workers to come and be attracted to us and stay with us. We'd like to see them stay with us for 30 years. We kind of chuckled about that, because I know my parents both worked for the same organization their entire life. That's what you did then, right? Today, younger workers change jobs every year, every 2 years. And so, how do we attract them to stay with us? And a big, big part of that is good company culture, and that they have room to climb the corporate ladder. And when I say climb the corporate ladder, I see that that ladder can go sideways, vertical, horizontal, changing, learning new skills. We're going to really get into some of that in a little bit, but it doesn't just mean that you have vertical movement for them. It is that you grow them within their role. Okay, and then somewhat important, committed to corporate social responsibility, is well known and has a reputable brand, and invests in the latest technology. So again, as a company, you look at this list, you see what's important to them, you start focusing on some of those, you are going to really make some steps into attracting those younger workers. Okay. Um, One of the things that I looked at with Gen Z when it comes to flexibility, because that is number one on the list, right? I want flexibility. Well, what does that look like to a Gen Z person? Because if I asked a Gen X what flexibility in the workplace means, might be very different than when I ask a Gen Z what workplace flexibility is. Gen Z wants compressed work weeks, 4-day work weeks. They want to be able to vary their start and end times, adjust their schedules as needed. They want to be able to work remotely or in a hybrid fashion. They want flexibility to either finish school, go back to school. And so they're really trying to say, I want to work, I want to do a good job, but I want to also be able to incorporate these things that are important to me in my personal life along with that work. Okay, so what are some current trends? A few things we should be aware of with younger workers is um, anxiety and mental health is a big issue. Unfortunately and sadly, this younger generation has the highest rate of suicide of any generation that we've seen. That's something we really have to we have to look at and focus on and say, why is this generation have such a high rate of suicide? Emphasis on well-being and focus on optimization. So one thing we have to remember is that the majority of Gen Z grew up online, right? And online is not something anybody before them really, they didn't grow up with it. It might have been introduced, but they literally grew up in an online environment. They also grew up with a lot of economic turmoil. So that creates a lot of anxiety, which leads to mental health issues. Um, so we want to create a more resilient workforce and working towards something that matters. And I think, one of the things that a lot of Gen Zers look at is this corporate side, corporate responsibility. And for some companies, that's really important. Some companies, it's non-existent. It's just about the work we do rather than necessarily serving the community or the communities around us. Um, so we have to start looking for how can we create a sense of vitality in our workers, build a more resilient workforce, um, and um, and creating conditions where employees don't necessarily feel stressed all the time. One of the questions that they will often ask is, am I really willing to sacrifice this for my job? That's such a departure from the way of thinking that older generations had, right? It didn't matter how stressful your job was. It didn't matter how, you had a bad boss that gave you anxiety every day. You just kind of toughed it out. And I know certainly I've met with a lot of my peers in HR and some of the complaints we hear from managers and especially managers in older generations don't quite get that mentality. And they get very frustrated with that mentality. But the reality is, we have to really get our game on in understanding this generation. They will be the majority of our workforce, whether you like it or not. So we have to then understand that workforce. One thing that I think we can really do when we focus on optimization is here's where we really can use Gen Z and their online skills and their tech knowledge to our advantage and also give them some purpose, right? By streamlining the work, using technology to its highest potential, getting rid of bureaucracy, which helps minimize waste and improves the quality of the work. So here's where I feel like we can really bring together younger workers and help optimize the work with their own knowledge and their wherewithal within technology. Okay, the kind of culture that younger workers want. A vibrant, dynamic environment, humanize the employee experience, team interactions, creative workspaces, technology driven. So, a lot of people, the idea of enclosed offices is not attractive to a lot of younger workers. They want to work at a table, just like you see here, where they're in a team and they're sharing ideas. And they want a positive, a non-toxic work environment where they feel supported, safe, and included. So again, I go back to if you were to look at your work environment, what is it about it where employees might feel supported, where they might feel safe, where they might feel included? And if you don't have that kind of environment, you want to look at how can we incorporate, what can we do to kind of incorporate more of that environment? Gen Z also places very strong emphasis on companies whose mission and values align with their own. So again, I want to go back and ask you a question. How many of you have written and written mission and value statements? And if you do, does everyone know what those are? So do you have them, and does everybody know what they are? So let's see some answers from some of our participants. Okay. Stacy says that her company does. Anyone else? Can you share with us? Do you have written mission and vision statements? And if yes, does everyone know what they are? Can they recite them? Okay, Paul says not really. Yes, it's the base of our product. Yes, we have them. They're written in our employee handbook. Couple more. Okay, most of the companies I work with do not have them. Thank you, Kelly. That is actually probably, in my experience, most companies do not have them. Or if they have them, they're written down somewhere, maybe in a company handbook, maybe on the wall. I used to teach companies how to write their mission and vision and value statements. And when I would be in the room, in front of the room, one of the questions I would ask is raise your hand if your company has mission, vision, and value statements. And quite a few hands would go up. And I'd say, okay, if you can recite your mission statement, leave your hand up. And almost all the hands go down. So what I find companies do is they write this very lengthy mission statement about all we want to be in the world, all we want to be to our clients, what our products are, et cetera, et cetera. Mission statements should be literally one sentence, one sentence, powerful sentence, maybe two, that drives people, that drives performance. I'll give you a couple of my favorites. The Ritz-Carlton mission statement is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. I love that mission statement. It's very powerful. It talks about what we expect of our employees, the kind of service we provide, who we are as a company. And it's very easy to remember. When I was one of my first jobs out of that I worked was for Marriott Corporation. I don't know what their mission statement is today, but back then it was the client is always right. And as a young worker, that was always pounded into our being, our mental being. And so that would drive my performance. That would drive my behavior. The customer's right. I have to take care of the customer at all costs. So again, that's what it should be. Our mission statement at HR Network is we help small companies become great employers. And so, and we have mission, vision, and values. Every quarter, our team has a team meeting that we get together, and we start out every team meeting reciting the mission, vision, and values and what we are doing today that align with those mission and vision and values. Why? Because I want that to be kept top of mind to employees so that it does drive their behavior. So I encourage you, even if you have a mission and vision and values statements, if you have them, great. Look at them again, incorporate them into the workforce. I actually hire people against our value statements. I actually do performance appraisals against our mission, vision, and value statements. Are people aligned with them? So I encourage you to look at that and do some work on that. Okay, so attracting younger workers. So look, first off, we have to attract them. And believe me, it's going to be even more difficult with younger workers because they're very worried about AI, right? AI, especially at lower levels, are going to be taking over some of those jobs. And taking over some of those jobs, younger workers are really worried about what kind of job will be available to them? Will it get taken over by AI? And then what do they do? How can they learn other skills and additional skills beyond the skills they have? So these are some things to think about when you are working on attracting younger workers. Where do they look for jobs? Job boards, right? So Indeed and any of the job boards, almost half, and then other search engines as well. Other ways they look at are websites of companies. I'm going to talk about your website in a minute. Networking, word of mouth, career centers from their schools, cold calling and emails from recruiters, or none of these. So look at those top things: job boards, search engines, and websites. I'm always curious when I to look at companies' website to tell me what it tell what to see what it tells me about them as an employer. A lot of most company websites certainly have our services, what we do for the company, what we do for the client, and I think those are important and valuable. But where's the first place? If I see a job posting for a company that sounds interesting to me, let me explore this further. Where's the very first place they're going to go to explore further? They're going to go to your website. And what they're looking on your website is, what kind of company are you? Do you have mission, vision, values on your website? Do you have anything about what it's like to work there? And so your website is a very important part of attracting younger workers. So I encourage you, go look at your website. What does it say about you as an employer? Does it say anything at all? And if it doesn't, it's time to take a look at that and maybe add some more information. So, as an example, I saw a website that I really liked. I don't know if we're going to look at websites. I don't think we are, but I saw a website for a major construction company. Now, and they were trying to attract women to their company. And so I found it very interesting. They did a video of one of their female employees who came to work for them and had worked for them for over 10 years now. And the video talked about why she was attracted to this company and then what it's been like for her working at that company over the last 10 years and how supported she feels as a female and as so imagine I'm a female. I'm looking for a construction company. I go check out their website and I see this. And I go, wow, that looks like a company I'd want to work for. Right? So again, you could have, if especially if you're trying to attract Gen Zs, you could have other Gen Zs that have joined your website, statements from them, a video from them, pictures of them. So again, and not just pictures of them, but they're looking for, are you socially responsible? Do you provide, do you participate in any community events? So all of these things are things that you can do to attract younger workers, and you should highlight them. Okay, let's talk about another thing Gen Zs are looking for are vibrant workplaces. So when they come to interview with you and they walk in the door, what do they see? Do they see nobody around because they're all in their closed off office spaces? Or do they see communal areas where people are collaborating and working together? Because that is very much what Gen Zs like to work for. Do they see movable whiteboards, lounges with coffee tables, coffee inspired meeting spaces, stand up, sit down workspaces? Those are the kind of work environments that Gen Zs are looking for. Okay. I think I have a couple more things I want to talk about. Don't hesitate to ask questions. I'm keeping an eye on that. Okay. One thing that younger workers do is they seek purpose, purpose in what they do. It is not about collecting a paycheck. That's important, absolutely, got to pay the bills, but they want to have purpose for why behind they're collecting that paycheck. They're not afraid to turn down work that doesn't align with their values, or if it does, or if they end up in a company and they find that it doesn't align with their values, they will quickly leave the company as well. So that's why it's really important that we try to make sure we're aligned before we even hire them, that they know this is a good company to work for and I would be a good fit here. Um, when they talk about purpose, what they're really looking for is that they want to contribute to something that's bigger than themselves, something that they feel fulfilled in. And so that's important that they It isn't just a job. It isn't just a paycheck. They aren't just an employee number, right? That they have value and purpose. So, what are some of the must-haves that our younger workers want? Demonstrated career paths. And remember, like I said earlier, that doesn't mean vertical. You could have a career path that says you're going to spend 18 months in this role, and then we're going to cross train you into 18 months in this role. So you pick up additional skills. That might be very attractive because maybe you don't have the capacity or you're not big enough to offer vertical growth. Growth does not have to be vertical. Demonstrating professional development avenues. So maybe I can be trained in another area. Maybe I can get certified in another area. So there are professional development programs for me to expand my knowledge and skills. Competitive pay and perks. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter what generation you are from, everybody wants competitive pay. How do you know your pay is competitive? Well, in California, I know not everyone's from California, but in California and now in quite a few states actually, we have transparency laws that say we have to post the range that we are offering this job for. So I think employers are getting much more in tune about market pay, and what is market pay. But if you don't know what market pay is, or you haven't gone out and done a wage survey or looked at a wage survey in a long time, I really encourage you to do so. I was working with another employer and they were wanting to hire a junior accountant and they wanted to pay them $20 an hour to start. As I pulled the competitive pay data for their geographic area based on their size, and the starting salary was $26. That's why they were having trouble finding good candidates, right? They were completely off in understanding what the market pay is for that job right now. Um, I have also read that, okay, we have a comment that I want to read. I have also read that younger gens share their salary more readily than older gens. Have you found that to be true? Absolutely. And by the way, we all have to share it now anyway. If you're in a state that has the transparency law, you have to share it anyway. But the other thing, and this goes for everyone in all states, so I'm glad you asked that because older generations, we never talked about our salary. That was taboo. It was frowned upon. You were told not to. We no longer can do that. The oh, what I'm thinking of it's not coming to me in the moment, but it'll come to me in a minute. National Labor Relations Board. So the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, we have tended to look at them and think of them as somebody who oversees union companies, but now they are much more involved in private companies as well, and they have quite an influence on some of these things. One of the things that they have, they don't make laws, but they do. They can file claims against companies, and they do have state agency rules. So I would think of them as like any other state agency or federal agency. Um, we can no longer tell employees that they cannot talk about workplace conditions. And one of those workplace conditions is what I get paid. So we can't tell employees that they can't talk about their salary anymore. That actually should be something that is in your handbook about not impinging on their Section 7 rights. That's what it's called under the NLRB or NLRA, National Labor Relations Act. Their Section 7 right says I have a right to talk about, complain about my workplace conditions. So, and one of those is pay. Yes, I find that they share their pay all the time. So we have to be aware of that. And we not even can't stop that. So, in knowing that. So your pay scale, your wage scales, what you pay people should make sense. And if it makes good sense, I don't care if anybody knows what everyone else is making because your wage scales should be set up based on market pay. You have a wage scale based on years of experience, what they bring to the table, what certifications, etc. When you see a wage scale, so I'll give you a few hints on this. When you see a wage scale and you see a minimum, a midpoint, and a max, The midpoint is considered market value. Market value is a fully competent individual who can do the job, right? Below market value is typically people who are in training, learning, first 1 to 5 years of experience. Above market value doesn't mean they're any smarter, they have more knowledge, it means they have more time. You're paying for seniority at that point when you go from market value to what the top of the range is, right? So if I were to look at my employees against a wage scale for their job and against their peers, does it make sense? Does the wage scale that I have people who are less in the job? Do I have equity within my employees? So younger, not younger workers, but people with less experience or lower in the scale, people with more experience or higher in the scale, and that my wage scales make sense as well. Question: where do I locate wage scales? Um, you, you have to have access to wage data. Indeed, PayScale, a couple of a couple of the bigger um, wage companies, I mean, I'm sorry, recruiting sources will provide wage scales. It's not the greatest data. It's an indicator. Don't lay your hat on it, but I use I pay a lot of money to participate with a company. Yeah, I use ERI, Economic Research Institute, but it's extremely good data, right? I know the integrity of the data is very good, so I use that for our clients. But at least even if you use like Indeed or somebody like that or PayScale, and you get a free wage scale, it's an indicator. At least you kind of know where I should be at. But beyond that, then you have to develop your own wage scales. So you base it based on levels of the job. And then the minimum is 0 to 1 year experience, whereas the maximum is, 10 plus years experience. And midpoint is the market value that is out there right now for that job. So that's kind of how you put that together. Okay. Perks. Gen Z love perks. I think we're going to talk about more down the line about perks. I think we are. So let's kind of wait on that. And nurturing a people first workplace. And oh, BLS, thank you, Paul. BLS also has wage scales. And I don't think it's free. BLS is not free. As a matter of fact, it's quite expensive, but it is another source. Okay, nurturing a people first workplace. I will say I hear a lot of companies talk the talk about people first and our culture. But when you get in there, I don't see managers walking the walk, right? And Gen Z pick up on that very quickly, that lack of integrity between what you say you do and how they're being treated, and what that manager's like. One of the most difficult places I find for is managers who are not good managers, who are not good people managers. You know, when you if you look at why people don't leave a company, they leave their supervisor. If you have a bad supervisor out there who is not taking good care of employees and not really there for them and not building and growing them, and is not very kind to their employees, you'll lose people quicker than you will anything else. So making sure you have good supervisors, they've had good supervisor training, that they are not losing people because of their own management style. Providing a positive candidate experience. So we did talk about that a little bit already, but the idea of, right now, when a candidate puts resumes out there, many of them hear nothing back from. employers. Like they could put 20 candidates out there, 20 resumes out there, and they might hear nothing back. Or they get that, we received your resume. Thank you very much. We'll be in touch. That's not a good candidate experience. And quite honestly, if you are serious about getting good candidates, you need to be very proactive in your recruiting efforts to really respond quickly, to get them interviewed quickly, and by the way, because it's such a low market right now, the people you're interviewing, if you wait 2 weeks from now to do a second interview or even consider an offer, they'll probably be gone by the time you get there. And I'm sure you've had this experience. So again, you really have to look at your candidate experience from their perspective. How quickly are you able to move on candidates? How quickly can you get through the process? And then lastly, promoting your employer brand. So again, we think of brand when it comes to our product, but we don't think of brand when it comes to us as an employer. So very first place I'm going to look at to think about your employer brand is your website. What does it say about you? But you have a brand. I've actually done a whole nother worksheet on just branding yourself as an employer. But there's so many things you can do to brand yourself as an employer. I'm curious if anybody's doing anything interesting or unique to attract younger workers. So I'd love to hear from you. Type it in. I have another question. While anybody might be sharing that or typing that in, and I'm happy to even call on you if you have something to share with us. I will answer this question. What should businesses do when Gen Z employees don't grow with the company, although they are offering paid training, education reimbursement, and incentives for certifications? Many times we've run into employees who become complacent and not wanting to take on additional responsibilities, which makes it difficult for both the employer and employee to grow. I think that happens with any generation, right? You might have employees of any generation who kind of become complacent. So I think of it as um, if anybody remembers the book Good to Great, they use the metaphor of the bus. And when I look at businesses, I think about this all the time about stages of business and business growing and putting the right people on the bus in the right seats. When a business starts out, so often the bus is old and rickety because we don't have a lot of money to start out with, and we're on very rough terrain. The road is rinky dink. Who do we bring along with us on that bus in the beginning stages? Friends and family. And they're willing to put up with the old bus and the rinky dink and the rough road. But as we grow, we start to get on more smooth roads. Our speed goes up a little bit. We hire more people. They're not friends and family anymore. They're not necessarily as loyal, but we still want to make it attractive for them to stay on our bus. And then eventually our bus is on the superhighway. We're rolling. We're doing good now. And not everybody who started out with us or people along the way are the right people for where we are right now, are not the right people for that bus ride, for the superhighway. They were loyal, but they don't have the right skill, or they might have the right skill, but their heart isn't in the right place, or they seem complacent. The reality is they're not doing their best work either. So I say we always have to be looking at who's on our bus and what seat are they in. And sometimes they need to move to a different seat to rev start their productivity, their interest. Sometimes they need to get off the bus, that the bus no longer serves them, doesn't serve us, doesn't serve them. And that's sometimes a hard decision, especially if they've been somebody who's been with us, let's say, a long time, but they just aren't there anymore. So I think you have to try to do what you can as an employer to attract people who align with you, retain people who align with you, engage those people. But at the end of the day, not everyone's going to be a right fit. And sometimes we have to recognize that. And even if they're not a good fit, they're probably not at their full capacity either, and they're not completely happy either. So sometimes we have to move some people off that bus. Okay, Crystal shared that we participate in local high school job fairs to recruit younger workers and offer an apprenticeship program. Oh, I love that. That's great. So, and especially, in high school, I have a 16-year-old grandson. Um, until a few months ago, he didn't really know what he wanted to do. And all of a sudden, he's decided that what he wants to do, and he's going to go find an apprenticeship for doing it. And he's already talked about the kind of company he wants to work for, and what their values are. So I was curious to see it from a 16-year-old's perspective as to what they're looking for, and already looking for good culture, good company, that they can provide an apprenticeship program for me of something I want to learn. So that's great. Okay, we have been talking about a lot of good stuff and we are way behind. So, I can see that we only have 15 minutes left. Um, I'm just going to keep going. If you can stay on with us, great. If you can't, the video will be here. But I feel like there's such good information here. Okay, 60%, retaining them. 60% of millennials are considering new employment. 49% are going to quit their job, half of them, in the next 2 years, and 62% are confident if they lost their main source of income, they'd find equal or better work within 3 months. Gen Z walks in your door with one foot already walking out the door. Boy, is that frustrating, right? Um, and so you need to start building from day one what I call the stickiness factor, right? How do we stick them to us so they want to stay? And so let's look at that stickiness factor. How do we build longevity? There are so many things you can do. Prioritize mental health and mental health programs. Does your company offer an EAP, an employee assistance program? Do you have anything that shows that you're supportive and inclusive in your environment? Do you have any type of mentoring or coaching program? One great idea that I've seen from companies is on day one, I'm going to assign you a mentor. It might even be a peer, but somebody that you can go to and ask things about how this works. How do I do this? Who should I go to? Somebody besides your boss or your supervisor, so that I have somebody right from the get-go that I can connect with, rely on, etc. What kind of training and development do you offer? That's very important to employees. Do you allow them some control? We're so used to the older generation so used to reporting to the boss, doing whatever the boss said. And younger workers don't think like that, right? And so it becomes a bit, and we're afraid for them to make mistakes and we're afraid to give them some of that control. But the reality is they want some control over the work they do, and they want to be able to make mistakes and learn from them. So, do you have that open in your environment? Communicate openly and often, connect to mission and vision and values, highlight any impact you have to the community, understand that pay and benefits matter, work-life balance, and building a strong organizational culture. So again, I think we've talked about a lot of these, but uh, that's important. Okay. Forget about experienced managers. Honesty and empathy are more important to younger workers. So what do they want in their manager or their supervisor? Honesty and integrity, empathy and caring about team members, empowering and motivating, friendly and more of a flat hierarchy, well, work-life balance focused. You know, back in the day when I was a younger worker, I was a single mother. And in those days, if my child was sick, I had to pretend I was sick because parents parents didn't stay home to take care of sick children, and it didn't look good to your boss if you would do such a thing. And so, the script is completely flipped today, right? They want to be able to go to their boss about whatever is on their mind, whatever concerns them. They want their boss to be empathetic and care about what's going on for them in their life. And they want a boss that's friendly, that's kind, that is supportive. I have a program in our company called Life Matters, or Life Happens. I'm sorry, Life Happens. Life happens. What does that mean, life happens? Well, we recognize that life happens all around our employees' lives outside of work. People have babies, they lose family members. So there's deaths in the family, break bones, going on a ski trip and break a leg, need a surgery. Life happens. I don't want my employees to feel fearful that when life happens to them, they're going to get in trouble, or I'm going to look down on them, or it's going to be stressful for them because, oh my gosh, what about work? And because we have that in our environment, people are more open. And what happens is the team rallies together for that person when life is happening to them to make sure the work gets done because they know when it's their turn and some life event occurs on for them, they're going to be able to attend to it, and the team will rally around to make sure everything's handled and taken care of. I get a lot of good feedback around the idea of that, right? And that our environment has that. So anyway, a lot of good things here, but things for you to look for. Okay. How does return to office, flex work, and autonomy work together? So people are coming back to the office, but in a very much more flexible way, or at least that's what they're wanting, right? Um, whether it means a flexible work schedule. It can really mean different things to different people, but a lot of for the younger workers, they want collaboration, right? If I'm going to come in and work in the office, like, I've heard a lot of feedback about these hybrid workforce where I have some people come in on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and some people come in on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And the complaint is, why do I need to come in at all when half the people aren't even here? If I'm going to come in here, I want to come in here to collaborate with my teamwork, my teammates, and other people on the team. So again, that was a flexible workspace, but I'm not sure it really offers some of that collaboration and socialization that people look for as part of being part of the office. So collaboration, a proper workspace, and socialization are still the top three drivers to get people to come back into the workforce. Okay, we have attracted them, we're retaining them, now we need to engage them. And here's where I find a real difference between older workers and younger workers, right? Older workers often measure productivity by how many hours you put into work in a day. Younger workers don't see hours at all. They see what it is I need to achieve. What's the end goal? What do I need to achieve it? And not how many hours a day it's going to take me to achieve it. For many younger workers, they don't understand, hey, I did everything you wanted me to get done by noon. Why can't I leave now? That's their thinking. And an older worker would say, because your schedule is till 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you have to stay till the schedule. Doesn't matter to get everything done. And they don't understand that. And so this is where I think we're going to have one of the biggest rubs between older workers and younger workers. Younger workers don't want to just stay at work just to put in hours. They think about output and productivity, and their metric is, did I accomplish it? Did I finish it? Did I get it done? Not how many hours did I put in. So that's something I think we have to really look at when we talk, and we need to be better, more effective at clearly defining what our objectives are, our timelines, and our deliverables. And we need to be a little more flexible on work hours and focusing more on end results. Okay. Uh, so especially, um, looking at task completion when our tasks are completed. So, especially since our millennials are kind of the early adopters of new technologies, one of the things we can really utilize them for to our advantage is tracking deliverables. There are so many ways we can now project management, task deliverables, tracking tasks, put your younger workers in charge of some of your more advanced technologies of tracking these deliverables, and is another idea or example. Another a challenge of managing younger workers. So since some of them we require them to be here from, in the office from 9 to 5, no matter what they've accomplished or what's on their plate. So they're doing this task masking, pretending to be busy at work because I got to be here, but I don't have I've gotten my work done, so I'll pretend to be busy so they don't um so you might start to see things like they're not necessarily trying to avoid work by masking, but they're either bored or they don't have other work that they could be doing. So that's why really honing in on productivity, on task completion, on managing the projects to see where you are really helps us understand what it takes to get the job done and can we expand the job? Can we provide new learning? So one reward you can give your younger workers or any workers, let's say you have them on a team and they got a big project done, let them go home 2 hours early. The project got done. Don't keep people around just because the clock doesn't say 5 yet. And again, that's just really something we're going to have to work on. Okay, I have a blueprint here, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly on workplace strategies for younger workers. It'll be the detail of this will be in the information that you'll be sent, but I want to go through it pretty quickly. So we want to increase information sharing to alleviate fears of uncertainty, show them paths to career progressions to incentivize them, explain how their individual contributions matter, give them room for autonomy, provide specific constructive feedback, harness community and connection, and then prioritize wellness and mental health. So, increase information sharing to alleviate fears. This is where we're going to have a we have to really learn to have a two-way dialogue. Um, Many companies are getting rid of, for example, they're getting rid of the annual performance appraisal, especially with younger workers. No way they're going to wait a year to hear how I'm doing. They want to hear how I'm doing on the first day there, on the 10th day there, on the first month there. So now we have to start looking at feedback in a different way, and providing that feedback, ongoing discussions, ongoing communication, and shifting your from a need to know policy to more of an open access. It really allows them to understand what's going on in the company, where they fit in the company, what their impact is to the company, their role and responsibilities and expectations. So we need to increase our information sharing. Show them paths to career progressions. And again, remember, for it does not have to be vertical. It can be horizontal. It can be leapfrog. I'm going to leap from this department over to this department. I'm going to learn this. And over the next 3 to 5 years, I'm going to learn all these different areas of the company where then at some point I might be able to manage some of them. I'm not going to go from here to manager, but I'm going to learn these different areas. So there are things you can do to help both in reskilling and I call it upskilling, right? Where they start to learn new skills beyond the one they have. Cross-functional rotations, mentoring programs, online content learning. So there's a lot of different things you can do to help employees grow. Explain how their individual contributions matter. So they are a very purpose-driven generation. Both Gen Z and are very purpose-driven. They want to know that their individual contribution and their role in a team is helping support the company's mission, right? And so it's important that we share with them that they share what their unique skills are, their capability, and the growth of the rest of the team. Make sure we're asking for their ideas and suggestions, and they've got good ones, right? They've got some silly ones, but we all do, right? But they have some good ones. Creating dialogue about their unique contributions and what their role plays for the greater good, and then being able to explain organizational goals that might have a positive impact on the community or even the world. Give them some room for autonomy if you want to keep them motivated. So flexible management styles, um, you might be quite surprised that you might have a better outcome for this. You want to create opportunities to lean in on their strengths of leveraging technology, social media, and their desire for connection. They're much more motivated to buy into your vision if you're driving their engagement with them. Okay, be specific. Constructive feedback to demonstrate you are invested in their success. They want transparency, continuous feedback, action steps to take. You could even consider having a group discussion or a training on how to build resilience and emotional intelligence to succeed for their lifelong self-improvement journey. And as I said before, forget the annual performance appraisals with the younger generation. They want consistent, ongoing feedback. And so maybe it's more of a once a month, 15-minute sit down with the manager to talk about what's working, what's not working, what do you need from me, kind of thing. Even if you do the annual performance appraisal, you need to have a lot more built-in discussions in between. Harness community and connection to engage them. They're kind of a lonely group. Remember, they grew up online, so they didn't get a lot of social interaction in the way we all did, right? As older workers, they've been isolated. They didn't forge these deep professional relationships. So you could consider a mentoring program, a peer group, a buddy system, somewhere where they have somebody to contact for support and collaboration. And creating these shared teams really helps develop camaraderie. Doing team building activities, project kickoffs, celebrations, and out of business discussions. Maybe you have groups that, a reading club or a something club that they can meet on, where some of people have shared experiences that they can share. Okay, almost there. So I'm just going to run a few minutes over. Okay, prioritizing wellness and mental health shows that you care. Excuse me. So I mentioned earlier about having an EAP. What is an EAP? An employee assistance program that offers counseling, substance abuse, financial counseling, dependent care, and work-life support. They used to be really inexpensive. They're not so inexpensive anymore, but I think they're worth the cost. You have to just think of it as part of your benefit costs, right? That you have something like that out there for them. Something I see so little employers doing and supervisors is just simply asking, how are you doing? Being aware of what might be going on in their life, especially if there's any kind of stressors going on, and being a little flexible with them when those things occur. Kind of like I told you the program we had earlier about life happens. Lead by example, too, by the way. You can say all day long that life happens. But then the manager shows up the day after they lose a loved one at home because they have to be on the job. So your managers and supervisors need to lead by example. Employees watch their manager and supervisor. Doesn't care what is written in the handbook, doesn't care what's written on the wall. They watch their managers and supervisors as to cues of what's okay and not okay. So make sure you lead by example. Okay. Um, So stay or go. What creates the situation or the environment for somebody to continue if they want to stay or go? And again, work-life balance is the top of the list. Good learning opportunities, higher salary or financial benefits, workplace culture, flexible hours or reduced schedule, opportunities to progress or advance in my career, and I derive a sense of meaning. Why do employees leave? Pay wasn't high enough. Pay is always at the top of the list. But by the way, pay is not a driving factor alone why people leave, right? It is because I can go to the next company and I'll get paid. I'm going to get paid no matter where I go. It is the bigger picture of how it feels to work here, what this company offers me that I feel a part of. So those are the big picture is important. Lack of career advancement. I feel burned out. The job was detrimental to my mental health. I didn't find the work to be fulfilling or meaningful. The role didn't offer a positive work-life balance, and there was no learning or skill development at this organization. So, hopefully, you've learned we have to develop new strategies to cater to the Gen Z. We need to create a culture of understanding where they're coming from, how we can, and how can we meet them to where they're at. And that is your key to success in attracting, retaining this generation of workers. Okay, so I have a question here. A couple of you asked if you'll be sharing this recording, and yes, if you attended, that you'll get a copy of the recording. How do I better motivate them to accept new tasks and responsibilities that previous managers didn't enforce? I was brought in to change the work ethic. Okay, well, that's a difficult one. Um, Changing the culture does not happen in a day. I do programs with companies on their workplace culture, and we say it takes a good year till we really feel we really see the change. And we do it bit by bit by bit by bit. We introduce things to bring into the culture. We open up discussions, etc. So it is a slow process, but if you keep building on your successes, you will see change. You will see movement. But when it comes to new tasks and responsibilities, again, getting buy-in from them. What are their ideas? How do they see doing it? Can it be done as a team? So you can take a lot of what we talked about in this today, and you could actually create some of that for introducing new roles, responsibilities, but ensuring that you're transparent about it, that you have open communication about it, that you show them by example, and and if the prior manager didn't enforce it, they're going to have to see from you you're a different manager. You have different expectations of them. You're there to support them. They might have mistrust of you because they had mistrust of the former manager. So, actions speak louder than words. So important when we're working and managing and dealing with employees. Okay, not too bad. We only let 8 minutes over. I hope you got some good ideas today. That's what I love to do is get you thinking, put some ideas in your head, and thank you for attending. Have a great day, everyone.